People do not fall in love with who you are. They fall in love with who they see themselves to be in your presence. Most human connections are mirrors, even if we are unaware of it. When someone looks at you, they are not merely observing you. They are seeing a reflection of their internal state. If your presence reminds them of something they long for, or something they once had and lost, or something they never had and wished for, it creates an invisible bond. That bond is the beginning of what they will call love. But we must understand that it is not always a conscious choice. It is often an unconscious recognition, a silent agreement between two energies. You meet a person and without understanding why, they feel familiar, comfortable, even profound. And often it is not because of who you are objectively, but because of what they project onto you. Imagine a person who has always sought calm in the chaos of their life. If you carry inner stillness, your presence becomes their peace. It's not necessarily that they are admiring you for being peaceful. They are falling in love with the part of themselves that yearns for that stillness and sees it embodied in you. Similarly, if someone has always felt abandoned and unloved, and you carry the energy of acceptance and steadiness, you might become the safe harbor they always hoped for. In that moment, you become more than a person. You become a symbol. And people fall in love with symbols more than they fall in love with reality. There are layers in every individual, memories that have shaped them, emotions that still haunt them, desires that remain unfulfilled. And when someone meets you, and your energy or your character reminds them of a piece of their own story, you become a trigger, not of pain, but of longing. You remind them of something they've buried or suppressed. This is why certain people feel like home immediately. It's not because you are home for them. It is because you reflect the image of home they've been carrying inside for so long. When you walk into a room with dignity, compassion, or strength, and another person has been looking for those traits in themselves, they do not see just a human being in front of them. They see a mirror of possibility, and in that reflection they feel alive. However, this form of love is delicate, because the moment you stop reflecting what they want to see, the illusion fades. Love that is based on reflection is inherently unstable unless it evolves into awareness. When people fall in love with their own projected image and not your truth, they are not loving you. They are loving what they think you are. And the danger here is that if you grow, if you change, if you reveal new aspects of your being that don't match their internal image, they may say that you've changed. But the truth is, you were never that image to begin with. Their love was directed toward a reflection, not a person. This is why some relationships begin with such intensity and then crumble with equal speed. It's not because the feelings weren't real at the time. It's because the foundation of the bond was illusion, not understanding. They loved what you triggered in them, not who you were beneath that surface. And when they could no longer see themselves in you, they no longer felt love. So what they were in love with was the experience of being near a part of themselves that they wanted to embrace. You just happen to be the mirror. And sometimes people fall in love with the wounds they see reflected in you. Two people can carry the same emotional wound, abandonment, rejection, shame. And when they sense that mutual pain in one another, it can feel like a connection. They may call it love, but often it is bonding over shared suffering. You see, emotional wounds recognize each other before words are spoken. And when someone sees in you the echo of their own inner struggle, they feel drawn to you. It's not something you can fake. Because people on a subtle level are highly sensitive to authenticity, you can smile with your face but carry tension in your chest, and they will not trust you fully. You can speak kind words, but if your energy is defensive or closed, others will feel distant even when you stand close. But when your inner world is aligned, when your thoughts, emotions, and body are in harmony, then your presence becomes magnetic without effort. People are drawn to this kind of energy because it gives them an experience they rarely find in the world. Peace without demand, acceptance without judgment, stillness without emptiness. In a world that constantly pulls us into stimulation and noise, to meet someone who is deeply quiet inside is unforgettable. Not quiet in the sense of being shy or withdrawn, but quiet in the sense of being undisturbed, centered, and whole. This kind of presence does not need to prove anything. It simply is, and it allows others to drop their masks without fear. This is why people can fall in love with someone who doesn't speak much, who doesn't perform or try to impress, because in that space they feel they can rest. Not because the other is extraordinary, but because their energy creates a sanctuary. To develop such presence requires discipline. Not the harsh discipline of force, but the gentle discipline of attention. Every day you choose where your mind goes, how your body moves, how your breath flows. If you practice being aware of these, you slowly begin to carry that awareness in everything you do. And over time, others begin to feel it. They may not be able to describe what they sense. They might say, "There's something about you," or "I feel calm around you." That something is your cultivated energy. It speaks louder than any charm or charisma. It tells others, here is someone who has met their own mind, who has sat with their own fears, who is not running away from themselves. That sense of inner completion is rare, and it naturally attracts others. Some people will fall in love with you simply because your energy gives them what they have been searching for inside themselves. They feel safe because you are not reactive. They feel free because you are not controlling. They feel seen because you are present. And this kind of love is not based on appearances. It is based on vibration. It is not something you do. It is something you are. And the more you return to your own center, the more your energy radiates outward without force. You become like a tree, strong, still rooted, offering shade without chasing anyone. And those who are tired from the sun, they will come to rest under your branches, not because you called them, but because you became the place of rest they needed. This energy is not only felt in stillness, it is also present in your movement, your walk, your breath. A single step taken with awareness is more powerful than 100 steps taken unconsciously. A single word spoken with sincerity is more healing than 1,000 empty affirmations. This is why even the smallest gestures, when filled with presence, can have a deep impact on others. A look, a touch, a nod, when offered from a place of clarity, can shift someone's entire emotional state, not because of the action itself, but because of the energy behind it. People remember how you made them feel more than what you did or said. And what makes them feel that way is not your behavior, but the field of presence you carry in each moment. People are starving for authentic presence. They are surrounded by noise, pressure, judgment. So when they meet someone who is quiet inside, who listens without trying to fix, who observes without reacting, it feels like home. Not because that person has all the answers, but because they offer a space where answers are no longer urgently needed. That is what real love begins with, not need, not fantasy, but resonance. Your presence becomes a mirror, but unlike the mirror that reflects only the outer appearance, this mirror reveals their highest potential. You are not projecting anything onto them. You are simply holding space where they are allowed to unfold. They laugh a little more freely. They speak a little more truthfully. They move without fear of being misunderstood. And in that state, they meet a version of themselves they had forgotten or suppressed. That meeting feels like awakening. It feels like returning home. And they begin to feel love, not only for you, but also for themselves. That love is powerful. It is healing. It is rare. And because of its rarity, it becomes unforgettable. This is why sometimes people say they miss someone, but they cannot explain why. The reason is not always in the words exchanged or the time spent together. It is in how they felt in that person's company. Did they feel alive? Did they feel calm? Did they feel worthy? These feelings are the true markers of connection. If they felt closer to themselves when they were with you, then the absence of your presence feels like losing a part of their own soul. It's not just you they miss, it's the feeling of being whole that your presence evoked in them that is the true gift of a deep connection. But this kind of love is delicate. If you begin to perform, to seek validation, or to demand love in return, the space you once created begins to close. The other person feels the shift. They no longer feel free, they feel pressure. And the very thing they loved, the feeling of being unburdened, begins to disappear. So to hold this kind of space requires humility, it requires silence. It requires a deep inner strength to not make it about you. Because when your presence truly serves another, you are not trying to be needed or desired. You are simply being present with no agenda. And in that state, you offer the other person something most have never known, unconditional presence. This is not about sacrificing yourself or becoming invisible. It is about being so rooted in your own being that you no longer need to impress, to dominate, or to seek attention. You are simply there, fully, calmly, quietly. And that stillness becomes a sanctuary for the other person's truth to emerge. They feel loved not because you tell them they are, but because your presence says, I see you, and I do not need you to be anything else. That message, even when unspoken, carries more weight than the loudest declarations. When someone feels that they can be completely themselves around you, without shrinking, without pretending, without editing their truth, they begin to heal. That healing is what deepens the love. Because real love is not based on intensity or excitement, it is based on trust. Trust that says, I can be all of me and I will not be punished for it. When your presence gives someone that trust, they feel held in a way that few experiences can offer. They are not falling in love with the role you play. They are falling in love with the liberation they feel through your awareness. But to offer this presence, you must first give it to yourself. You cannot help others feel seen if you are blind to your own truth. You cannot hold space for another's wholeness if you are fragmented within. So the path to becoming the kind of person others feel safe around begins with self-acceptance. When you make peace with your own flaws, you no longer judge others for theirs. When you forgive your own past, you stop trying to fix others. And in that neutrality, your presence becomes medicine. Not because you are perfect, but because you are real. And people are starving for that kind of realness. In the end, love is not just about connection, it is about elevation. Do you help others remember who they truly are? Do you offer a space where they can shed their masks and stand in their essence? If so, then you are already giving more than most. And when they fall in love with you, they are really falling in love with who they become when they are with you. That kind of love is rare. That kind of love is sacred. It is not based on what you provide materially. It is not based on the words you say. It is based on the feeling of inner expansion that your presence inspires. To be that kind of presence is the highest form of offering. It requires nothing but your authenticity, your stillness, your truth. And if you can live in that state, even briefly, you will understand that love is not something you chase. It is something that is drawn to you naturally when others feel free in your presence. When they meet themselves through you, they fall in love not just with who you are, but with the parts of themselves they finally feel allowed to become. That is the love that matters. That is the love that lasts. In a world where people constantly perform, where image is curated and authenticity diluted, what truly draws others in is not the persona you present, but the space you hold. The version of yourself that you show to the world, charming, confident, composed, can only create attraction. But it is the quiet, unspoken energy of presence that creates connection. People may admire what you do, respect what you say, or be entertained by your personality. But if you do not offer them a space where they feel safe to be who they are, they will not stay. That space is not built through effort. It is built through depth. And when people fall in love with you for that, it is not because of your story. It is because in your presence they can stop telling theirs for a moment and simply exist. There is a difference between impressing someone and holding them. One fades, the other remains. Holding space means you allow someone else to feel seen, heard, and understood without interfering. You do not need to fix their emotions, complete their sentences, or make them feel better. You are simply there, witnessing them with full attention. And in that stillness, something sacred arises. They begin to put down the weight they carry. They begin to breathe differently. They begin to feel the ground beneath them. Not because you did anything, but because you didn't. You didn't judge. You didn't interrupt. You didn't project your own fears onto them. And that rare kind of non-interference allows them to return to themselves. When someone experiences that in your presence, it becomes unforgettable. They may not even be able to explain it, but they will always remember the feeling of being met exactly where they were, with nothing to prove. This kind of space is not created through words. It is created through your being. When your mind is not racing to respond, when your heart is not trying to gain approval, when your energy is not scattered in 1,000 directions, then your presence becomes an anchor. You sit with someone, and without even speaking, they feel held, not controlled, not fixed, just held. And that holding is not a physical embrace. It is an energetic one. You give them the space to unravel, to express, to simply be. And in that moment, they experience a level of acceptance they may have never known. That is what makes people fall in love. Not your persona, not your story, but the experience of being fully themselves without fear in your presence. This level of presence can only arise when you have met yourself. If you are uncomfortable with silence, with vulnerability, with emotional honesty, then you will not be able to hold space for those qualities in others. You will react, you will deflect, you will offer solutions when none are needed. But if you have sat with your own pain, if you have allowed your own truth to surface without shame, then you become capable of holding that same mirror for someone else. You do not rescue them from their experience. You trust that their experience is valid. You trust that it will pass. You trust that your role is not to guide them out, but to walk beside them in the dark. And when you embody that trust, they feel safe in the uncertainty. That is when love deepens. Not because you removed their suffering, but because you didn't abandon them in it. Most people are not used to being held in this way. They are used to being analyzed, corrected, managed. Even in close relationships, people often feel pressure to perform emotionally, to smile when sad, to pretend when scared, to shrink when feeling too much. But when they meet someone who says without words, you are allowed to be as you are, it feels like finding water in a desert. That level of acceptance is not passive, it is powerful, because it doesn't just make people feel better, it makes them feel real. When someone feels real in your presence, when they are not trying to impress or hide, they begin to open in ways they didn't know were possible. And in that openness, love is born. This is why the most meaningful connections often happen in moments of silence, not in grand conversation. It is in the quiet, shared space where nothing needs to be said, and yet everything is understood. That space cannot be created by pretending. It cannot be accessed through charisma. It is the result of inner stillness. When you are not seeking anything from the other person, not attention, not validation, not praise, you become a safe place, a place where emotions can breathe, a place where masks fall away. And when that happens, people remember it. They remember you not for your achievements, but for how they felt in your presence. True presence is not loud. It does not demand recognition. It simply is, and its effect is profound. When you sit with someone and do not try to change their state, when you hold your own energy without trying to control the moment, you create a kind of sanctuary. That sanctuary is rare. It becomes a refuge not just for the other person, but for you as well. Because in holding space for them, you also hold space for yourself. You stop performing, you stop reacting, you enter into a shared moment of being. That is where intimacy lives. That is where love grows, not from doing, but from being. Many people are drawn to those who can offer this. They may not be able to name what they feel, but they will be drawn back again and again to your presence. They will say, I feel calmer when I'm around you, or I can be myself with you. These are not compliments to be taken lightly. They are acknowledgments of the depth of space you create. And that depth does not require effort. It requires alignment. When you live in alignment with your values, when your actions and your heart are integrated, your very presence becomes a source of healing. But this kind of love cannot be possessed. Because it is not based on needing each other, it is based on allowing each other. The space you hold is not a cage, it is a garden. In that garden, love blooms not from control, but from freedom. People fall in love with you not because you complete them, but because they feel complete in your presence. And that feeling is not dependent on external circumstances. It is born from the quiet integrity of your being. So if you want to understand why someone loves you, look beyond your words, your actions, your image. Ask yourself, what space do I create? Do people feel more like themselves when they are around me? Do they feel safe to be honest? Do they feel free to be silent? These are the signs that you are holding space, not performing a role. And if someone falls in love with you for that, cherish it. Because that kind of love is not based on illusion. It is based on truth. And truth, when met with presence, becomes the foundation for something rare and lasting. In the end, it is not who you try to be that matters. It is who you are when you are not trying at all. If your presence creates peace, clarity, and safety, then you will be loved not just for what you give, but for what you allow others to become in your presence. That is the love worth cultivating. That is the space worth protecting.